right, it is 5:30, so we'll call the March 7th Business Operations Finance Committee meeting to order. Ms. Shope, can we have a roll call?
Yes. Jawan Winfield,
Present.
Brian Anderson,
Present.
and Spencer Anderson cannot be with us this evening.
All right. And with our short people here, I'm going to make a motion to amend the agenda and move item 4A, as it's an action item, to after item 2A, after the monthly financials, so that we can make sure we take action on that while we have a quorum.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Any conversation, discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? That passes unanimously. Next is the approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion?
A motion.
I'll second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? That passes unanimously. Next, we have the minutes that would have been accompanying the agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion.
I'll second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? That passes. We'll move on to item 2A, the financial reports. Mr. Duff, thank you.
It was on. Okay, so this is a report that I had to put together myself. The payroll person left. We do have that position filled, it was kind of interesting to have to put this together. So it is a pretty a standard month. Not much happened. On the summary report, it shows revenue. We received special education aid of $633,000, $30,000 of transportation aid, about $390,000 of federal flow-through funds, and then there's some other title funds. So those are our general fund and special ed revenues for that month. Otherwise, the expense category is a normal expense for a month. The general expense for payroll, food service, it's the general contracted amount that we have each month. So expenses and revenues are pretty normal for the summary. So there's not much to report, no big things like last month where we had a significant infusion of revenues. Any question on that one? The next one, the next page, not much to report there, but I did have a typo on there. Sorry about that. And I'm aware of it. And I already sent Michelle an update to say January revenue and January federal revenue. So sorry about that. But as I mentioned, there's not much activity. I already mentioned the activity already for revenues. On the next one on expenses, the one change I just wanted to mention, I had mentioned for a while that there were some accounting changes that need to be made between capital and non-capital objects for the phone system upgrade. So that transaction has occurred. So in compared to last month, you don't really see this, but if you compared this report to last month, capital objects was reduced, non-capital objects was increased to reflect an accurate accounting of the phone system upgrade. So that's about all that happened other than the normal expenses in that category. So that's usually what we go through in the financials. Is there any other questions about this? Is, like I said, it's a fairly mild month for financials.
Anybody else up here? Okay. Nope, I think we're out. We don't have any questions for you. That means you did such a good job. We don't have questions.
Well, it was a pretty mild month.
All right. Well, I'd entertain a motion to recommend this financials for approval to the full board.
A motion.
And I will second it. We have a first and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? All right. Thank you very much for that. The next item up will be the TC Networks contract extension for 23-24.
Okay. Just- Oh, here, I got it. Okay, so, I thought I had it muted. It must have been unmuted because I was trying to, okay, sorry about that. Okay, for the TC Networks contract extension, I provided some information in this slide. They were approved after an RFP for a 3-year contract in May of 2019 for technology services that they provide. It's about an $800,000 contract. In February of 2022, they were given a 1-year contract extension, and they agreed to a 0% increase in that contract. The challenge of going through an RFP for such a large service, we were unable to get that RFP completed for this round. But TC Networks did agree to another 0% increase for this upcoming year for a 1-year extension. So that's what we're recommending, that we have the committee recommend to the board for approval, the 1-year contract extension. And it's a plan to have the district develop an RFP for technology services for the subsequent year for 2024-25. Are there any questions about that?
How many, do you know, well, I know you're just helping us out, and I appreciate it. How many extensions have we gave TC Network?
So 2, this would be the second 1-year extension.
Thank
And
you.
each year it was like a 0% increase, so they allowed their contract to remain flat.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
So I'm guessing typically the contracts when they go out for RFP are 3-year contracts, right? Because you don't want to do this every year. So we didn't do it this year because time and manpower and things happen, right? So I'm guessing the same thing happened last year. So are we at 2 years in a row where we just didn't do it?
I'm not sure of last year's situation. It may have been agreed to because they were able to get it to a 0% increase, so it was negotiated to a flat rate for that one. So doing an RFP on a complicated nature of technology services is pretty time-consuming and cumbersome. So, but I wasn't here. I'm not sure why that was the case, but I do know that they were pleased with a 0% increase at that time.
Okay. Is there, and again, this might be in the weeds, but are we generally happy with them? Because what I would tell you is, if I don't know many businesses that are accepting a 0% increase on contracts. And we all know what inflation has done. And nothing costs the same as it did last year. And in this case, 2 years ago, now that they've done 0%. So are we enjoying, do we have the right services? Do we have, the right technology? And because even if there's no increase, doesn't mean it's a good deal. So I guess I'm just asking for more of an opinion on, are we kicking the can down the road because we just didn't do the work, or is this a good value and we've held prices down?
So, did you want, Dr.
Yeah, I can jump in on that thought. 2 things. One, naturally, when our previous executive director vacated the position was vacated for the time frame in which we would have brought an RFP to fruition, typically. So that's why the 1-year extension was given the first time.
Okay.
Here we are now. Mark came in, and we still don't have a business manager. Note that. Now Mr. Duff is here, and we will have a business manager coming in next week, March 16th. It's his first day of service for us. And so moving forward, we will be able to move to RFP with someone in the seat to guide that process. As it pertains to the services, I just want to give you a quick backdrop. Yeah. As it pertains to the services of TC Networks, I've had conversations with my administrative team. I've had conversations, of course, with teaching staff. They do a wonderful job for us. That is the feedback that's been provided for me. Naturally, in these conversations, we look at not just what you're providing, but also kind of where we want to go to as well. And TC Network has been able to provide that level of service. And so, as it pertains to service, the technology department, and working with in our entire school district, has pretty much met the mark that we have set forth for the technology integration for the school district of Beloit. Now, again, I also just got here in November, too, and so a lot of these themes we have to kind of work through to make sure that we actually are meeting all of the needs for all of our students. But as it stands, from the conversations that I've had, TC Networks have done a great job in servicing our students and families in the technology department.
And Dr. Garrison said that very well. One of the things TC Networks accomplished this year was the phone system upgrade. That was a very significant project that they took the lead on. We have been happy with their services, and they've had some major accomplishments to move the district forward. So as far as cost effectiveness, you don't know until you do an RFP to see whether or not you're getting a cost-effective contract. This is $800,000 contract, so it is a significant one. So they can certainly bid again and go through the process. And it doesn't hurt to go out to RFP to make sure you're getting the cost-effective services and that you need. So,
additionally, the RFP, we will look to start that this year, although it states 23, 24. Technically, it takes a lot longer time for companies to come in and relook at our network, relook at all of what we have, both hardware and software. I always tell people technology is what we see here, but it's a whole nother division behind how this actually all works. And so the companies will definitely go to RFP probably sometime in September, October of this year to be prepared for RFP 23, 24, 24, 20,
right.
24, 25, that makes sense.
So what you're saying is you anticipate
Starting
another
this year.
one-year extension next year?
No. So we'll start this year for this is, so 24, 25 is next school year.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, it would be
develop RFP for
after
technology
the
service later this year for the services starting 24, 25.
Okay.
So we will have to go and start looking for RFPs, or put RFP out, not looking for, but put an RFP out to see if companies want to come and possibly service us in a different way. TC Networks will be in that bid for next year if they would like to, but we will go to RFP again starting sometime in September, October to be prepared for if we believe that we need to switch to someone else.
We did contemplate whether or not we could squeeze it in, but you don't want to disrupt the infrastructure, network, and technology services. So there's a timing to when you would do a transition if there happened to be a different vendor approved. So we didn't think we could squeeze it in, and we didn't think, for example, we could do one and have it effective January 1st because it would disrupt the school year. So we have to go have the RFP align with the cycle of the school district so that we don't have an interruption of services.
Perfect. Okay. Any other questions, committee? Any other non-committee members? All right, we don't have any questions. This is an action item, so I'd entertain a motion to move this forward to the full board.
I'm not sure.
And I'll second. Any other discussion? You get a first and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? And that passes. Thank you for that. We'll move on to item 3A, Food Service Management Company RFP.
So we have some of the people that were part of the selection team, and so they're going to come up and do this presentation. I'm going to try and click through it, so come on up and introduce yourselves. And
While he's pulling that up, I'll do some quick introductions. I did bring some notes just because I'm not used to standing behind the podium here and not being able to see the presentation fully. So My name is Samuel Carnes. I'm the current principal at Todd Elementary. I was asked to put together a team to lead the food service bid for the school district of Beloit. And so I graciously honored that request, being somebody who's an advocate for the whole child, which is part of our strategic plan as well. And so tonight, thank you, Finance Committee, for hearing us out, and thank you for the non-committee members being a part of this so that we could share our process. So what I'm going to do in the next 5 minutes with you is kind of share a timeline of events of what we did as we went out for the RFP, which is the request for proposal for the food service bid. I will share with you what our recommendation was or is. And then we will share just a little bit of the rubric and then open up for any questions that you all might have. So if we could go to the next slide, please.
Michelle, do you want me to run it?
Oh. Schedule of events. All right. So I'll make sure that I go through each one of those bullet points because it is kind of hard to see on the presentation. You all should have a hard copy in front of you that's blown up page by page as well if you'd like to follow along. So on January 12th, we opened up the bid process, which was a Thursday. This is where the bid was released to the public. Companies who were interested in doing business with the school district of Beloit were able to begin researching our district to see if this was a good fit for them. Then on January 26th, we held site visits, which was also a Thursday. We hosted those at Beloit Memorial, Todd, and Fruzen, so we had a representation of elementary, intermediate, and high school. This was an opportunity for the companies to come in, kind of check out the hardware and the things that we had available to them to make put together an appropriate bid accordingly based off of the supplies that we would have for materials. On February 14th, the bids were due, and this is where we met at COLAC here. We opened up those bid packets. We did have a few companies present. We did end up having a total of 6 companies who submitted a bid to do business with the school district of Beloit in reference to our food service provider, which from what I understand is the most we've had for a while, and it's always great to have choice and selection that's out there. It means we have a lot of opportunity and selection to look through. Then on the week of February 20th through the 24th, we had our committee, the RFP committee, and again, I stated the RFP was the request for proposal. We met Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and this committee consisted of principals, assistant principals, directors, educators, community partners. We wanted all stakeholders to have a voice in the selection because we feel as we begin to make the next selection for our students, which again, it's our kids who are going to be the recipients of most of the food that gets consumed here at the schools. We wanted to make sure that we were making a very well-educated decision with a lot of representation. And so the week of February 20th through the 24th, we met. If you remember or don't remember, we also had a snow day in there, and so we still ended up meeting virtually. And so on Monday, what we did was to be efficient. We broke it down by 2 companies each day. So for example, Monday we looked at 2 companies, Tuesday we looked at another 2 companies, Wednesday was a snow day. We visited on the last 2 companies, and then on Thursday we came back together just right next door here to COLAC, and we went through our rubric, which the rubric you will see on the last page. So if you're wondering what the rubric looks like, we will get to that on the last page as well. But we narrowed down to 3 companies that we wanted to invite to be a part of the February 28th presentation and taste testing, which again, we were super excited that you'll notice through the next few slides once we get to those, the process of our students who were able to take part in that presentation-wise. They got comment cards, they were able to leave comments, and you'll be able to see those in your presentation as well. And I won't go through all of those, but you will have those accessible for you to see. So again, we narrowed it down to 3 companies, and they came out. They had presentations from 4 to 5, 5 to 6, and then 6 to 7. Each company got about an hour to prepare. We utilized different kitchens in different areas so that they weren't connected to each other in any way. And they prepared some meals, and we asked them to be kid-friendly because, again, that was the audience that we really wanted to make sure that we were targeting. So then after that, February 28th, taste testing and presentation of all 3 companies, we did a final evaluation on the DPI evaluation rubric, which I referenced is going to be on the last page. We can go to the next slide, please. So I'm going to kind of go in order in terms of what our recommendation is. And so the first company, which I'll share more about later. It is our recommendation. Here are just some visuals for you to see kind of their presentation. We wanted to kind of relive this moment with you all since y'all were not able to be a part of the taste testing and presentation. And if you want to go to the next slide, that's where some of the comments that the kids, which are true advocates for themselves, don't hide anything about how they feel about it, and they gave us their honest feedback. And again, we had representation of kids from Todd, Cunningham, Aldridge, Robinson, Beloit Memorial, BLA. There was a great representation. We had a good crowd of probably 30-ish kids out there who really enjoyed being a part of that. And I will also share how we would like to have that be something that we do annually to bring them back in, because again, they are the consumers of the food that's being served in the lunch lines. Next slide, please. So then one of the other companies that we also brought back in our top 3 based off of the rubric was Whitson's. And so this company actually was based out of New York. And so they were looking to expand their market. And so we really appreciated them coming in as well. If we want to go to the next slide as well, you'll see some more comments from our students. Again, this was a second company that we had also invited back out for the food presentation and food taste testing. If you can go to the next slide, please. Here's where I kind of already gave you, I jumped a little bit ahead. I gave you a breakdown of the students that were represented at all age levels. We had families ranging all the way from kinder, like I said, to like seniors in high school, because we even talked to some of the kids about their thoughts in high school. Like I said, very honest with their opinions on how they felt about the food that they got to taste. And we really thought that that was a great experience. And so we also had parents obviously there on behalf with their kids just to be a part of that. And so the parent feedback was important too, because some of them, they're the ones who are packing cold lunches for their kids. And we actually try to be super intentional by inviting students out who don't normally or have never, which I had one from Todd who had never eaten the hot lunch at school. And so we felt like that would be a super great candidate to come in and taste test the 3 different venues that we were looking at. Next slide, please. So what we did want to do was take time to also recognize and thank Aramark for the 25 years of service that they have provided for our district. As we get ready to turn the page and move into the next chapter, which again, our selection and recommendation that we were bringing forward was Chartwell's. We did want to take that time to again thank and recognize Aramark for the 25 years of service that they have contributed to the school district of Beloit. One of the things that we want to recognize, and you might have this as a question, so from my understanding, this is kind of a 1-year contract with 4 renewals in there. And with the renewals, this is where the committee, we really engaged in this process and thought that this would be something we'd like to do annually by bringing back our kids from a variety of different places in the school district to really give us their feedback in a setting where they are presenting some of the things that we would have seen throughout the school year, but then our kids could definitely vouch for all of those pieces. And so this is an accountability piece that we'd also like to build in with our new recommendation for Chartwell's, especially as it's also a new chapter and page that we would be turning. It would allow us to have that yearly check-in and really make sure that our kids are enjoying it through that process. And so if you could go to the next slide as well. Again, I apologize, super hard to read, but we blew them up and gave you guys a copy. This was a rubric that was set out by DPI. So if you were kind of curious what was the scale, what were the weights, how did it break down, you'll kind of see 20 points for the bid that came in, or for cost, I'm sorry. And again, like I said, I'm not used to presenting from behind. So you'll notice though, just 20 points for cost, 5 points for transparency and reporting rebates, et cetera. 10% or 10 points for experience, references, and service capability, and then I'll let you kind of read the rest of those in terms of how it was broken down. But the heavily weighted part too that we revisited on at the end of the night that I talked about earlier in the timeline for February 28th of the taste testing was the menu selection, and this is where we wanted to make sure that if we needed to make any last minute analyzations based off of the student surveys and student interest of what they shared, we wanted to do that. And so I'm going to invite Mark, I think, to talk about financials a little bit.
So and then Dawn can also assist, but there are certain parts of the bid that provide a guarantee dollar amount return to the food service fund. And I think you can see the dollar amounts on below. And the food service fund does need profits in some respects because that helps pay for other aspects of the food service fund. So you never want to have a food service fund run in a way where you need the general fund to subsidize it. So if you look at the rubric below, at the bottom, Chartwell's had the highest return of funds to the district on their proposal. Is that?
I just want to make one correction, that SFE actually came in third. We had the presentation for the two top, but we had Aramark as the incumbent come in so that they could show things that they had done during the course of the year. So we did have them, but SFE actually came in third and Aramark came in fourth.
Correct. And then before we open it up to questions, the one thing that I did want to address, because this actually came from one of our students, they were actually worried about Miss Barbara Ann and Miss Rosa, which are the lunch ladies at Todd. And so I did want to share that the three positions currently at the top for Aramark, these folks will have an opportunity to apply for the positions within the new company as well. And from what I understand, our current staff, because it was my third grader, he was very worried about those lunch ladies being there for him to serve him his food, and so we just wanted to reassure on that side of things too. So, and that's what we have for tonight in terms of taking you through our process for the RFP and the bid for the food service provider. If there's any questions.
Any questions for you?
Oh, for sure.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I think that's pretty dope that you guys had the kids be a part of that. I know my kids went to Aldrich, and for the years they went there, it was always a real hard fight to get them to eat lunch at school. So I really appreciate that. And secondly, is when you say that you want to do this annually, if we do pass this, the first contract, will it be just 1 year, or will it be 2 years, will it be 3 years?
So the way that I understand it is it's a 1 year, but it comes with 4 renewals. So I guess over time it could lead up to 5 years approximately with the renewals that happen. So when I say annually, we want to bring the kids back to the point of bringing kids to the center of it. We felt like it was very powerful to have them there. I mean, we as committee members, we didn't mind taste testing the food as well, but the kids, to see their smiles, to hear their conversation, and you just sharing Aldridge, that was one of the intermediates that came out and was well represented that night to try different things. And so when I said annually, we were referring to like the taste testing and the production or the food presentation for our kids so that we could really truly gauge and get their feedback through the process.
Thank you. Oh, and how would this this company you're bringing in work well with the food trucks that we have?
So each company, and I don't know if I'm allowed to elaborate, but I know each company recognized that we had food trucks, and that was part of the bid that we talked about, was we asked them, because we didn't want to say this is what we want to do. We wanted you to come in with ideas on how you wanted to utilize the food trucks that we purchased that are ours. And then they gave a lot of ideas, but I don't want to steal their thunder, but they did address that they want to utilize those, build community, have those be the things that you see out in the community, have our student athletes and student club groups and all of those organizations be a part of that, because there's a lot of things that you can learn just in terms of running a food truck. So that was actually, as the committee, was a super important topic for us as a committee, because learning opportunities, not just feeding the food, but again, what opportunities can you take away from that process? So the food trucks were addressed through the bids as well.
That's amazing. Thank you.
So we also had 2 representatives from Chartwell's here.
Oh, yes.
Welcome.
Well, first, thanks for stepping in and kind of leading that charge to, vet this process out with the RFP. That's important, and I love that the kids were involved. On this chart that's on the screen there, the rubric, you said it's important that it gives back to the food fund, but the dollar amounts on the bottom, they don't really have labels. So I don't know what they mean. So if you could just talk to me about what that bottom row means, and the fact that Chartwell's has a number in a column that no other one does. I just need to understand what that number is.
So the bottom number is actually what they are anticipating returning to back to the district. So with Chartwell's, the 169 that they had on there, they actually came to us and said, so this is all based on the RFP. So if they were going to base it on what we asked for, but they went a step further and said, oh, well, this is what we could give you if we go by what you asked for, but this is what we're going to give you by what we're going to give you. So that made a huge impact for us because they had innovation and they had all these different programs that they knew that they could come and bring more to us, or for us, I should say. So, and to be quite frank, we did cost last because we wanted a really good program. And we've been very fortunate that our fund balance has always been, very healthy. So we wanted to look for somebody that really wanted the same things we wanted. It wasn't just, well, this is what you're doing, this is what you're gonna get, and that's kind of where we were. There wasn't anybody else that took that step ahead and said, we're gonna give you more than you asked for. So that was, the committee was very impressed with that.
All right, thank you. Yeah, and I guess my only other comment would be, it's just interesting that our long-term provider came in fourth place. That's maybe a little telling, right? Maybe it's time for some change, and I think change can be positive, change can be good. So I appreciate the open-mindedness to, not be afraid to say, hey, let's look, see what else is out there. Any other questions from the committee?
No questions, just a comment. Next year when you guys do this, I'll have some Tuesdays free after April 6th. So if you want to.
We will keep that in mind. And before I forget, I wanted to acknowledge the committee. We did invite them, and a lot of them wanted to be here tonight. Some of them got some Chambers of Commerce invites. And so the committee, again, a huge shout out and a thank you to them for dedicating their time because, like I said, that Monday through Thursday was 4 to 6 p.m., 2 hours of their time. Then we came back together for the taste testing, 3 hours. So again, I know a lot of staff members exhausted kind of just towards the end of the day, but really persevering with us. And so I just wanted to give a shout out and a thank you to the committee for helping up as well, step in and be a part of that process, and as well as our kids who, again, were participants. So before I forget, I want to make sure that we recognize them for their time and their service through that process.
Anything else? Anything from anybody else up here? No. Again, thank you. This is not, this is the first time we're seeing this, so it's not an action item today. So thank you for the information. We'll see it again. And we'll move on then to item 3B for the RICO print services renewal.
This is something that we've been working on, and Dr. Garrison and I and the team have discussed looking at different ways to make our budget and operations more efficient. RICO had, I'm just sharing this. So RICO has been our print services provider for quite a while. And they were due for a contract renewal. So one of the things that we worked with them on is sometimes under the board policy, you can have cooperative pricing. So that means it was already pre-bid, and so that the pricing that we receive without going to RFP is already based on a competitive price that was bid through NASPO. That's a cooperative program for that, where they bid it to get a good price, and then they can base their bid off of that. So one of the things RICO did for their print services contract renewal is they worked with principals, departments. They toured all the buildings, talked to departments, and figured out what printers they really needed. They proposed removing old equipment, and they proposed, like, for example, low cost or low utilization printers. They refinanced and extended the use of that. There are some printers they walked around and saw stuffed under someone's desk not being used, but we're still paying for it. So they're removing that. So there's a number of things they did. So I think it was a comprehensive work to do that. Also, like I mentioned, they refinanced the terms of continuing the equipment. In addition, we're getting refurbished machines, which would be like new. They call it the green refurbished machine. So it's a recycled machine, but we'll be able to have a pretty much brand new, all the guts replaced printer at much less cost. And in addition, we're upgrading our print center services capabilities to provide more cost-effective print options. They print well over 1 million copies a year, and they also do a lot of curriculum printing for our schools. So they do a lot of work. So they took a look at the print center to provide more cost-effective options for the district and for classrooms and teachers. So they've done this for many years. So one of the things, I think I've got this in reverse. So this probably should have been the slide we went through first, but it was due for renewal. And then this is what resulted from the work of RICO and the NASPO pricing. We've reduced our number of devices from 158 to 65. And the lease and the service expense that we have from RICO was an 18.6% savings. So annually we'll save $18,000. In addition, the upgraded print center will allow an opportunity for more savings, but more efficient services. So this is one where it doesn't exceed the $100,000 threshold for board approval, but it does ask that we bring it to you for discussion, and that's what we're doing today. Any questions on that?
Sure. One of the things that I wanted to do when we came in, when I was appointed, was to take a closer look at a lot of different opportunities where we could possibly save money. This was one of them. As you know, everything that's plugged in is owned pretty much by the school district, and we I shouldn't say owned, but work through a contract with other partners, and so all of this costs money, and naturally, when it comes to technology, some things are old and outdated, but if they're not turned back in, naturally you're getting charged for it. And so to really comprehensively look at what we have in our school district was very important to me. It was, like Mr. Duff mentioned, a painstakingly task in 3 months. But I thought it was very important that we did it. And I think, again, although it did save us some money, not the millions of dollars that I was hoping, but it did save us some money, and to the tune of, like Mr. Duff said, about 16%. Again, this work is not done in isolation. I want to thank the teams that, of course, worked on this. I can only give a suggestion or a directive, but Mr. Duff and his team, and of course Rico, they all pulled together to help us out and to really figure out what do we have in our district as it pertains to our technology stuff, if that makes sense, print stuff. Again, I just want to make sure I put some things out there because, again, it's not done in isolation. As board president oftentimes mentioned, you got to have a driver for this work, and I appreciate folk allowing me to kind of drive some of these conversations as it pertains to possibilities of us saving money. It's not oftentimes talked about, but this is another area that we save money. And again, I'll make sure I put that thanks into the room.
You're exactly right. This was a team effort, including all of our principals, our departments, all staff going through this to make it more efficient. So it was a good team effort on this.
Yeah, no, thanks, Dr. Garrison, for mentioning it. I think it's important as we're working through referendum conversations, right? And we say, hey, look, we're looking at under every stone. We're trying to, be good stewards of the funds. And I know you said you didn't save millions, but you know what? You went through the process and you found some efficiencies there. And I think that's exactly what is expected. So that's great. I just have one question. So on the number of devices, going from 158 to 65, down 58%. I was, I'm just a banker, so math. But yet our monthly lease only went down 18%. So did we get rid of things that maybe weren't very expensive, hiding under desks, or?
So one of there's a combination of print services that we have. You can have the big, huge copy machine that is very expensive, but they also were providing the small desktop type thing. So most of the ones that are being removed are those small desktops that really, it's more efficient to use a copy machine than a desktop, which uses a high-cost toner. And so that was the efficiency that we're seeking. There were some schools that also had a lot of these, so they were able to come in and say, well, why don't we, instead of having all these desktops, we're going to put one right outside this area, a more efficient copy machine. So that's how they did it.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions or comments?
You know I do.
I know it.
Just one question. Does TC Network work with the RICO, our RICO vendor?
Yes, they work together. All the copy machines that we have, the big ones, are part of our network. And the setup of it is supposed to be working together, so they do work together on that.
And a second, just follow-up question. When the budget comes for us to get new printers or lease new printers, does that come out of TC Network budget, or is that?
No, it's a different budget.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions from anybody? All right. Here, and thank you. Now, you said this isn't something that is going to end up requiring a vote. Do we anticipate seeing this a second time?
No, this was the discussion with the board under policy, so.
Perfect. Well, thank you for sharing it with us. We'll move on then to item 3C. Too bad Committee Chair Spencer Anderson isn't here, because I know he loves our school finance 101, as he calls it. So episode 3.
So this was one where we were going to do it in the board meeting, or should we do it here, or both?
So we can do a quick preview of this conversation as it stands, because it is in the Finance Committee. But Mark will, again, do this at the full board meeting as well. I do believe this conversation does need to be discussed at the full board. That's why it was added in 2 places, which we can always do for better
Perfect.
conversation.
Well, I'll leave it to your discretion to decide which
High-level overview.
version we
Very
get here. So since we'll hear it twice
Okay,
tonight.
so, yeah, and I'll do it quick. I don't know how much, let's see, I think we're over already. So, one of the things, these are the areas I've discussed with the board on school finance review. And we went through the revenue limits, equalization aid formula, categorical aids, and federal grants. But I thought that instead of going into the next part of the list, I thought it'd be good to go over the governor's budget proposal and how it might affect the district. So, and then we can have further discussions. Now, it should be understood, first of all, that the governor frequently proposes a budget, and the legislature does what they want with the budget. So many times the governor's budget in the education area is significantly changed by the legislature. So this is probably a good discussion, but it should be understood the legislature will have probably different priorities to change it. So the governor did propose a $2.6 billion increase in the biennial budget for public education. Equalization aid, which helps hold down, which is property tax relief for school funding, is increased about $1 billion. So you should be recognized, this is a 2-year budget. So this is $1 billion over 2 years, $2.6 billion over 2 years. So some of the things he did include was a per pupil funding increase. So the revenue limit would increase $350 per pupil. So that's about a 3.5% increase in the revenue limit per pupil funding. Our inflation rate's about 8%. So this is, I guess, I think School Board Association and others have been advocating for more, but that's what this came out with. And the next year would be an additional $650 per pupil on the revenue limit. There is something called, we do get state aid. It's a per pupil aid increase. There are modest increases there. Special education aid, that's where the most significant impact for the district would be they provided $1 billion in special education aid to reach 60% funding in both years of the biennium. I think Megan would be really excited about that proposal. So that would, that is a significant change. There's also an increase in reimbursement costs for English language learners. There is a state categorical aid program. And then he also has a significant initiative in the area of mental health support, providing $270 million in the Get Kids Ahead initiative. And it'll provide per pupil funding for mental health programs to support mental health professionals. So on here, this kind of tells you what the funding impact would be. There would be about, the revenue limit would be about the revenue limit increase in per pupil. The district would not benefit significantly from that in the next year because declining enrollment, we receive a cushion of funding and declining enrollment hold harmless aid. And if you increase the per pupil amount, it basically just reduces your hold harmless. So we would really get almost zero from that increase. However, it does increase our base funding, and it'll help us in the future. So it'll help us in 24, 25 by almost $4 million. So it helps us in the future, but not next year. So, and then special education aid would provide us with about $4.5 million increase. So that's where we would get a lot of help. And then some additional funding for English language learners. I'm not sure yet about how the mental health support program would work, but I'm sure the district would benefit from of receiving some of that funding for mental health support, and we can provide that more information on that later. So that's pretty much, it was a quick, I thought it'd be a quick meeting, so I went through it pretty quick. And so that's where I'm at, so.
So again, we know that there's a lot more detailed information that we'll share at the regular board meeting conversation. But again, as we stay consistent with our sharing as it pertains to our checklist that we put together since my arrival with Mr. Duff, I believe this is great information for the board to also tackle. More deeper conversation can happen at the regular board meeting, but we also wanted to make sure that at the committee level that we shared that this was part of that much greater conversation at the regular board meeting tonight.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. That's great news, I think, all the way around. Hopefully not too many changes
Yeah.
from our legislators. So.
And it should be, you know, the governor's budget has a lot more in it than this. This is just the big picture stuff.
Sure. Anything from committee members on that? Okay. Anybody else down here? We're good? Okay. Thank you very much. We'll move on. Actually, that brings us to our meeting closing, right? So our next meeting date will be Tuesday, April 4th at 5:30 p.m. for the Business and Finance Committee. And I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
A motion.
I'll second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And we are adjourned. We'll have the HR committee meeting at 6:30.
Board Member Miller, are you on the line?
Sorry to interrupt, but I can't hear anything on my end.
Okay. You said you can't hear anything?
Nope, I can now. Sorry about that. Thank you.
All right, that's a check, sound check. Make sure we're all tech approved here. Tech is working. We get logged in. Sometimes my computer does this. My mouse freezes up when I'm trying to. Don't do this. All right, everyone ready? Okay, I'm going to call to order the March 7th, 2023 Human Resource Committee meeting at 6:33 PM. Mrs. Shope, could we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Amy Levy,
Here.
Sean Levy,
Present.
Megan Miller,
Present.
and Joanne Winfield.
Here.
And we have 3 members who are not able to be present tonight. That's Brian Anderson, Spencer Anderson, and Greg Schneider.
Thank you. Is there a motion for the approval of the agenda?
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Board Member Winfield and seconded by Board Member A. Levy. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, and the motion passes unanimously. Is there a motion for the approval of the minutes?
So move.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Board Member Amy Levy and seconded by Board Member Jawan Winfield. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Employment recommendations, a motion may be made to convene the Human Resources Committee into closed session pursuant to Section 19.85, parentheses 1, parentheses C of the Wisconsin State Statutes relative to considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Board Member Winfield and seconded by Board Member Amy Levy. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mrs. Shope, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Joanne Winfield,
Aye.
Megan Miller,
Aye.
Amy Levy,
Aye.
Sean Levy.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, we will convene in closed session and then return. Okay. Megan, are you back in the meeting now?
I am.
Okay. The Human Resources Committee is reconvened in public session in order to take any action if necessary on items discussed in closed session. Is there any discussion of items for open session?
Yes, there's one item that I would like to bring note to, Mrs. Almendares.
Good evening, Board. I would like to draw attention to the request to rehire for the groundskeeper position. This position was approved by the Board for resignation, and prior to the last day was retracted by the employee, and I would like for this position to be considered for rehire.
Okay, thank you. Any board members with open session questions for Exhibits A or B? Okay, hearing none, is there anyone who'd like to make a motion for Exhibits A and B?
I move approval of Exhibits A and B minus the subsecurity officer at the district level position.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved by Board Member Amy Levy and seconded by Board Member Megan Miller. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Are there any abstentions?
Aye.
All right, any nays? All right, 3-1, the motion passes. Motions?
I move approval for the subsecurity officer at the district level position.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. It's been moved by Board Member Amy Levy and seconded by Board Member Megan Miller. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any nays? Any abstentions?
Aye.
All right. The motion passes with Board Member Winfield abstaining. All right. Let me see where we're at. Yeah, we are now on to our next meeting date. Our next meeting date is Tuesday, March 21st, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
I'll second.
Been moved by
Second.
Board Member Amy Levy, seconded by Board Member Jawan Winfield. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, the motion passes. We are adjourned. We'll start our next meeting in 6 minutes. All right. We rolling. We on time. All right, Board Member Miller, are you there? So we can get ready to get started? Just checking in to make sure.
I'm ready to roll.
Audio technical, okay. Okay, I'm going to call the March 7th, 2023 regular board meeting to order at 7:01 PM. Mrs. Shope, could we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Amy Levy,
Here.
Sean Levy,
Present.
Megan Miller,
Present.
Jawan Winfield,
Here.
and Spencer Anderson, Brian Anderson, and Greg Schneider are unable to attend this evening.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion for the approval of the agenda?
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Board Member Winfield and seconded by Board Member Amy Levy. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 The motion passes unanimously. Is there a motion for the approval of the agenda?
So move.
Oh, that's what I just did. All right, I got confused there. All right, Board Member Levy, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Mrs. Shope, do we have public comment tonight?
I do not have any emails, and I do not have anybody in the room.
Okay. So, we don't have. Okay. I do need to read our announcement that the Board of Education would like to let our families and viewers know that our regular board meetings are being simultaneously interpreted. You can watch the Spanish interpreted meeting through the link found at the board website under the Watch Meetings tab with tonight's date. In order to accommodate this interpretation, we will be monitoring the pace of our meeting to allow time for the interpretation. And I would like to remind our board members and others speaking to please speak one at a time. Thank you so much for your consideration and understanding. All right. We're now on to reports to the board. We don't have our student board report from Mr. Murray, and we have superintendent board report.
Yes, Tom, thank you, Board President Levy. And I have a few conversations that I would like to have today. First of all, I would like to bring attention to the events that happened on Friday at our boys basketball playoff basketball game at Muskego. I put out a statement notifying everyone that we are very aware of the events that transpired, and I would like to publicly make sure that I state that we are working very closely with the Muskego Norway School District Superintendent and Administration to quickly rectify this situation. When I say quickly rectify the situation, please understand that these situations do take time to work our way through. I do understand that there's a lot of detailed conversations that do need to be had, and we again do take these serious situations and allegations very seriously. Another thing I'd like to note is that our students have been wonderful throughout this whole conversation. I'd like to commend our boys basketball team for the work that they did and how they conducted themselves at the game. One of the things that we oftentimes forget to say is that our students are learning from us. And I believe that our students displayed complete character in this conversation, and they've learned the Purple Night way and being Beloit proud and what that actually means. Although I cannot express to you my deepest apologies for these actions transpiring, I want to let everyone know in the community that I do stand with our boys, and I want them to know that as well publicly. With that being stated, we do plan on doing something for our boys here at the school district level next week on March the 16th. Right here at the KEC, we'll be doing some opportunities for people to come out and hear, not only from us, but to make sure that we recognize their steadfast approach to this conversation. There's going to be there's going to be some noted other conversations in this event next week on March the 16th. We do notice that I would be remiss if I didn't bring the conversation that our girls also experience some of these similar conversations along with, I believe, our boys soccer team. And so for me, it's not only about recognizing what just transpired on Friday and recognizing our young men and how they conducted themselves, but also our young ladies and how they conducted themselves, as well as our young men and on the soccer conversation as well. Although a lot of people may not know everything that transpires in our community as it pertains to sporting events and athletic events and what actually happens at these events, please note that we want everyone to understand that, again, it means something to us when our kids display character to this level. And so with that being said, again, on March the 16th, we will have something for our student athletes as they have had to endure certain injustices that has transpired. So I just want to make sure I gave note to that situation. And again, I just want to also make note that we are, again, working very closely with the Muskego Norway School District Administration, they have been very cooperative in this conversation. I think it's very important to note that as well. Additionally, now I have to transition that conversation, so I may do a poor job with that, with such a sensitive topic. But the 2023 WASB Day at the Capitol will be next week, Wednesday, 2 weeks from now, Wednesday, March the 22nd. I wanted to make sure the board is aware that if you want to attend that, please let me know. Additionally, I have been having a tremendous amount of conversations as it pertains to our referendum. As you know, I've had conversations on the February 20th at the Beloit Memorial High School Library, February 22nd at the KAC, right here at the boardroom, February 23rd at Merrill Library. I wasn't able to attend the Todd Elementary's conversation because simultaneously I was having another conversation across the district with reconfiguration. But March the 2nd, Todd Elementary did have a conversation there. March the 6th, I did speak, that was just yesterday, at the Grinnell Senior Center for conversations around referendum. We do still have another maybe 6 or 7 opportunities where people can come see live sessions as it pertains to referendum community sessions in the community. Additionally, I've been having conversations as it pertains to reconfiguration. Reconfiguration is an ongoing conversation, and again, we started that conversation after the board approved the grade band configuration of K3 through 5th grade, 6th, 8th, and through 9th grade. 6th, 8th, and then 9th through 12th grade, Our reconfiguration community sessions, I've already had conversations over at Aldridge on February 27th, March the 2nd over at McNeil, March the 6th, 2023 at Cunningham, and then again on March the 8th, we will have another conversation right here at the Fruzen Intermediate School tomorrow. Future conversations will also transpire. Another virtual session will be determined along with the COLAC conversation here on March the 14th, and again March the 20th, with the board meeting being on the 21st. And so please come out to these community listening sessions in which we are really talking about the reconfiguration. And just to give the board just a quick snapshot of what's been happening so far, at the first conversation at Aldridge, we had about 20 or so participants. At McNeil conversation, we had about, again, 20 or so participants. And then, go figure, over at the Cunningham conversation, we had about 23 or so participants as well. And so we are asking the community to come out and, again, to support and or to to share your conversations around our reconfiguration community sessions. That is my overall quick update for today. Again, thank you so much to the board.
Dr. Garrison, I have a question. Is there a time for the event on the 16th?
Yes, we typically have, so naturally at the district level, we have conversations where we do celebrations here at the district. We call them the Community Awards and Recognitions at the KEC. It's going to be at 5:30. That was your question.
Thank you.
Yeah. But it's, instead of, that session will be focused with our current situation that we're working through right now.
Any other board members?
Not a question, more of a concern. So the situation the boys basketball team went through, I just foresee, and I'm thankful that our AD is here just to hear this also. I know it was a away game. I know it was a playoff game. If I can just recommend being the board member that's exiting. Oh, nobody laughed at that one. Okay. It would be nice, and I'll talk to Mr. Dupuy and Mr. Garrison on this. If we can get our boys to, and I understand. I talked to some parents. I talked to some players. Just the fact that they was in the environment. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to be very careful with my choice of words, but I don't know if the Southern Lakes Conference is going to be any better with away games. So just like if we can get an idea of what that looks like as our boys going to away games, just being respectful. And I just got to give a big shout out to those guys, because I watched them play like since they was like fourth, fifth grade, and to have to deal with that it's crazy. So I just want to throw it out there if there's any ideal of what that looked like. I heard rumors that the school didn't have administration there and they didn't see any teachers there. I was like, that sounds kind of crazy, but I didn't know. I wasn't there. But is that something, Dr. Garrison, you think we could work towards as in when our boys go into a different conference? And I'm talking about all sports also. Sure.
And so one of the things that I've already quickly started to work on is, sometimes it's what is in our control, right? And I took this situation very seriously right when it started happening from Friday, of course, into Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and on through this week, of course. And so what I've put together already, and from the district's perspective, what we will be moving forward with is pretty much like I like to call it a coach's Bill of Rights. And in this coach's Bill of Rights, it pretty much lays exactly down what we're going to do if we ever walk into one of these situations again. Number one, we do not have to stay in that environment. I've written it down so that it's very clear as it pertains to what we will do. I have shared that information with our athletic director and as well as with all of our athletic coaches in a conversation as well. And so one of the things that people forget is that, the WIAA does have rules in which they are supposed to follow. But if those rules aren't being followed during the basketball game, we can call timeout and ask for those rules to be followed. If those rules aren't followed, we can remove ourselves from the court of play until those rules are followed. Or we can do, in this Bill of Rights that I'm referring to, we can leave. We do not have to stay in that environment. And I think sometimes people forget that that's an option. I say forget that that's an option. I just think that we need to make it plain. And under my leadership at this current time, I've laid it out and I've made it very plain as to what we will do moving forward if this transpires away from our home field. Naturally, I do believe that, and again, it's like a 7-step process pretty much. I'm just giving the high-level overview. But I want people to understand that our kids matter, and our kids deserve to have safe places and spaces to play when they have competitive opportunities. There's also some other things that we're working on at the athletic department level, as well as at my level, around things that we can do with captains and leaders across our school districts. And so that's another platform that we are working to put together that I've already brought to fruition with the current athletic director, Mr. Jonathan Dupuy. With that being stated, again, I would love to have additional, offline conversations as it pertains to some of your other thoughts. But again, my goal is to make sure that all of our students are, again, treated with the utmost of fairness while they are in competitive play.
Thank you.
No problem.
If I could just add briefly, I would love to have WIAA buy-in if this is not already included in their rules, because in a situation like that, one, as it was described, was disgusting and unacceptable. And if we, as you were describing, decided to remove ourselves from that venue, that forfeit should not be on us. And that's not something that we can determine, but I would like buy-in from WIAA. And I would even take it a step further. If a situation like this occurs, that the cost of transportation for our staff and our students should be billed back to the opposing team/district.
I would love for the WIA to, support our decisions if this does transpire. Even if they didn't, I still believe we will be making the right decision to remove ourselves from the hostile environment that any of our kids would have to, endure if we didn't stay. But Mrs. Levy, I will reach out to the WIA and, ask for their support. However, that will be something that's, out of my control.
Yeah. So one of the things I'll add is just over the last 2 years, student athletes from both the girls and boys basketball program at Beloit Memorial High School, and as mentioned, our soccer team have endured these types of unacceptable actions based on negative stereotypes and unsportsmanlike conduct from fans in the student sections of some of our neighboring communities while competing in athletics. Our concern is for the experience and well-being of our student athletes who may have been prepared for something like this to happen because of the reality of racism in our society. But even with parental preparation for a moment like this, it hurts to experience other young people not look upon our young people and see them the way that we do. Our student athletes and the community members that travel to support the Purple Knights deserve better treatment than what they have experienced. In the most recent incident, we're proud of how our young men, their families, our community, and district leadership have all come together to support our team and respond to this situation. The indignity of having this incident happen to our young people should not be a rite of passage for Beloit athletes because we are more racially diverse than the communities that surround us. We are proud of all of the racial demographic groups and the diversity that makes up the city of Beloit and the school district of Beloit. We are proud of our history and identity as a strong community with many accomplishments and contributions to the state of Wisconsin, our country, and the world. We know the truth about ourselves as Beloiters. Beloit is a special place, and it is filled with special people. I think that, I would say a proactive move that we would look for in some of the superintendent, principal, AD conversations about moving into the next conference is something around that. I have worked in the Southern Lakes Conference, and I'll just say in general, sometimes student behaviors are kind of borderline in many places sometimes. So just a refocus on the sportsmanship and the hospitality that we're seeking to have for all visiting teams, no matter where we're at. That is something like a proactive start. For me, this is kind of, these are the types of things growing up in Beloit that our grandparents, aunts, and uncles have talked about, and I mean from all races, that is our experience when we have traveled to different places. But I think that, as Dr. Garrison had mentioned, that we want to move into the future with a different proactive stance, that we're not just going to keep putting up with this. There will be a difference because we will respond differently in the future. Because like I said, sometimes it's a game, and it would be unfortunate for us to have to withdraw ourselves from competition, but we are going to protect our children and not allow them to be disrespected like that in the future.
Board President Levy.
Miller.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, no, I just wanted to, you all said it. I don't want to not speak since I'd like the full board who's at least present to acknowledge that I fully support everything that I've heard suggested and all the thoughts and sentiments shared. So thank you very much.
And I will also like to just make sure people are also very keenly aware that, again, as this investigation, continues, naturally there's only a certain amount of information that I could share at the district level from one school district to the next. But please note that we are working very closely with the other district administration around trying to make sure that we handle this correctly. Again, I just want to like to thank all of the families as well who have came out to support our conversations at the school level, at the home level, naturally, some community members. We've also received, I just want to make sure I put this on note, apology letters from the community of Muskego, from regular community members as well, that they have sent those information to me. And I don't want to leave that stuff out because sometimes people may think that that stuff isn't coming, but it is coming to me, to my office, and I just want to make sure I put that as a note. So from the school district itself, there was a statement that was made as well as other community members have sent me statements as well, letting us know that, of course, they stand with our students in this situation.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Dr. Garrison on the superintendent board report? Okay. Committee and other board reports, Business Operations and Finance Committee. I'll just speak to that briefly. Did receive the monthly financial reports today, and also an overview of School Finance 101, looking at the proposals in the governor's budget. Teaching, Learning, Equity, and Pupil Services.
Hi, good evening. No reports tonight, but tune in at our next meeting. I don't have the date in front of me at the moment, but it'll be 2 weeks from today at 5:30.
Okay. C, the Governance Committee, we did examine the 5 priority areas of our strategic plan and make note of the things that we're doing at the board level to actualize those strategic priorities and move ourselves forward. D, legislative update, and then policy.
So my legislative report is attached for March 2023. As legislative liaison, I'm excited to participate in the 2023 Day at the Capitol event sponsored by Wisconsin Association of School Boards. And our next policy meeting will occur on Wednesday, April 5th at 5:30.
Okay. We're on to the consent agenda. Is there anybody who wants anything removed from the consent agenda? Okay. Hearing none, is there a motion for the acceptance of the consent agenda?
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Okay.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Board Member Levy and seconded by Board Member Miller. Is there any discussion? I do have one item of discussion. Dr. Garrison, did you want to make note of 990 and 970? In regard to the reconfiguration conversations, is that why those policies are listed?
Sure. So 990.
They were just listed because they passed through policy for first review. Okay. They'll be back on the 21st as well.
Okay. All right. All right. So there's been a motion for the approval of the consent agenda. We've had our discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. The motion passes unanimously. We are now to 6A, WIA Sports Cooperatives.
So I'll preface this conversation real quick. About 2 weeks ago, of course, I wanted the board to know that we were approached about our cooperatives for girls and boys hockey in our school district. And this cooperative, it's a list of teams that want to be that we already partner with, but additional teams want to join. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Dupuy for further discussion.
Yeah, appreciate you having me. Like Dr. Garrison said, we already co-op our Rock County girls hockey team and our boys Beloit hockey team. This will include Hononegah High School from Illinois and for boys and girls, and the Belvedere school district for girls. At my preseason meetings with my head coaches, they brought this topic to me, stated that this was in discussion last year, and where are we at this year. We incorporated a lot of virtual meetings with Hananiga's administration, their ADs, their assistant ADs, and Belvedere's AD. Throughout November, December, January, continued that conversations, had conversations with our co-op schools and the Badger Conference, which we're in for the girls hockey, and the Big Eight, which we are in for the boys. Brought it to their attention, and now we're bringing it to the board level and the district level at other districts for signature, and then we have to turn that paperwork in to the WIA by April 1st. So part of the reasoning behind it, we need to continue to grow our programs. Right now, our girls program only played varsity. Our boys program only played varsity with a pseudo half JV. So this will grow our programs based off the numbers, what you guys have received, to hopefully have a varsity and a JV level to grow that program. These student athletes come up through our Beloit Youth Hockey Association and are a part of that association, or the Rock County Juniors Association. And Illinois High School does not sanction high school hockey at the district level. They have club teams, and so those are some of the reasonings behind adding those schools to our co-ops.
Any other questions, board members?
I just have one question. Completely support adding to the co-op. Can you kind of explain the link between having more teams join the co-op? Is it like we would still have our school district of Beloit or Beloit Memorial team participating, or is it multiple schools on one team?
No, we're the host school. So we're the host school for these two teams, Rock County Ferry and the Beloit Memorial boys hockey. These schools come into our school to help build our team. We just don't have enough numbers to sustain the team, and that's why we went to a co-op. I remember, when I was here in '98 and '99, we won state, and it was just Beloit kids, right, after I graduated. But for whatever reason, those numbers have went down, and the youth coming up are these members, so I don't feel like we're losing student athletes from school choice. We're just giving kids opportunities to participate in the great things that we're doing, but they're not school choicing out of our school, but still wanting to participate in the great co-curricular things that we do.
So it's two teams.
It would be Hananiga District and Belvedere District. Now, again, this has to be approved by every school board that's within our co-op. So we might say yes, and they might say no. The WIA might say no, but we're putting together the data that you've been collected, and then we have to turn that into the WIA by April 1st.
Thank you.
So I just want to make sure, for clarity as well, we'll have two teams, a girls team and a boys team for hockey. It's a cooperative, multiple teams on that one team, and we host that team.
Correct.
With our kids on it and a lot of other kids on it.
Correct.
I think it's very important to note that people are still coming to Beloit,
Correct.
and they want to be on our teams and be Purple Knights when it's all said and done.
One more thing, I don't want to take too much time, but I do want to highlight or answer Joanne's question about the SLC. I've been doing a lot of work with SLC ADs throughout the entire year from August. We hosted a leadership conference with 10 to 12 of our student athletes and 10 to 12 of student athletes from every other school within the Southern Lakes a few months ago. We're followed up and working closely with Dr. Garrison. I just actually had a meeting with them. But this has been a hot topic, not only for our community and being treated fairly going into their communities, but same with them when they come into our communities. We've implemented a lot of things to make sure people understand that we do things first class here, and we want a safe environment, and we want kids to focus on one thing, and that's the competition. But we also want to put them in different situations where the first time we don't see that individual is when we step on the court or field. So we're talking about ways where we can get some leadership things with our student leaders throughout each district, get into our schools, see what we have to offer, enjoy conversation in a different light rather than just a competitive light. So that work is already being done, and I'm going to be honest, everybody in the Southern Lakes has been very open to it, so.
One of the things that we talked about, coming into this conversation is that, our kids are doing the same thing that their kids are doing. They're coming to school, they're learning, they're participating in sports, right? Or some form of extracurricular activity. But again, oftentimes they don't get to see each other in that light. And so when we bring our kids and our student athletes to these other spaces and places, they'll get to see the other kids doing the same thing, going to class, having lunch, and of course, being students in high school. And so we want to make sure that our kids are able to see not only that conversation, but also that conversation with us as well. So when they come here, and one of the requirements that I'm putting in place is that when these student athletes come to our spaces and places, that of course they get to see our school, or they get to have lunch with our kids, they get to eat with our kids, they'll see the same thing. And then that conversation in the end, though, will be led by athletic directors and leaders, in which they will talk about either sportsmanship, leadership, deeper conversations around, I hate to say it, but things that we should already know. Just be good people, right? What does it mean to be a good citizen? Beyond athletics, I will say this, beyond athletics, we're still human, right? And there are certain things that we all have in common, just being a human. And so I think these leadership conversations that every school district we will want every school district to participate in will be very important, because it'll be led by their leaders in their conversations as well. So when I come to your home, I want to see what you got. I want to see what you got to offer. I want to see your building. I want to have lunch with your friends and just be in a space where we're not oftentimes, like I said, seeing each other from a competitive nature on day one. And so those are conversations that we are having. And again, I would like to thank, Mr. Dupuy for, taking the bearings in this conversation and really running with not just his ideas, but some of my ideas as well. And just ideas that really make sense for all of us to come together to figure out how our kids can participate in these atmospheres where learning is happening. And that's beyond the field of play.
So I'll just add very briefly, and I'm going to date myself, so spoiler alert. Proud 96 graduate, but when I was in high school, we used to do exchange programs within the Big 8, and it wasn't just athletics, it was activities too. Mm-hmm. And that was regularly scheduled throughout the year, so it wasn't abnormal for students from Madison whatever to come down and do a shadow day with us, and then we would do the same thing. So if something like that could happen on a somewhat regular basis, I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, I like it.
Local exchange program. Bring it back.
Used to do that in 1995 also.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
I remember that in 93 and 92. Yep.
Any other questions about the hockey co-ops?
I had a couple. Class of 99. Yeah. For the record, I remember getting kicked off the bus going to the state championship game because I wasn't a model student. But won't he do it? Won't he do it? So, Mr. Dupuy, I had a couple of things. Thank you so much for bringing this to us. I had a couple of questions. I'm going to try to keep them very, very quick. Are we looking to do co-op with any other sports? Now, I'm looking at this list. We got Craig, Parker, Milton, Edgerton, Clinton, Broadhead. I'm thinking football. I'm thinking basketball. Is there any other co-op sports that we can reach out? And I'm saying community-wide.
That's a conversation for Dr. Garrison and myself, and I think the board to have at times. Obviously, we want kids in our great district, and the reason that we co-op, you're mentioning girls hockey. There's just not enough girls hockey teams throughout the state, right? And so when we look at co-oping those types of things, it's not offered at other school districts, but those are conversations that we can have. Obviously, people have reached out to us, but again,
So let me just jump in there.
I'll leave it at that.
We're a lively board tonight, so You know what?
I apologize. I apologize.
No, it's okay. I think it's good to smile sometimes. You know, again, we're human. So, you know, one of the things that I think we have to be mindful of in the work that we do with other school districts, that our door will be tapped on because we are one of the larger school districts in this area. And so when we have smaller school districts looking to expand their athletic opportunities and or activities and as well, our door is oftentimes tapped on to support and possibly grow other opportunities in our school district. Again, that is just what comes with being a Purple Knights and being in the city of Beloit. When those conversations do come to us, naturally, it comes through the athletic department. Myself and Mr. Dupuis have detailed conversations around what that actually looks like, what we're requesting. And then, of course, there's conversation at the board level as well. I'm in close contact with other area superintendents, and these conversations are being had. Full transparency around other sports, possibly looking at joining our sporting teams due to the fact that they may not have the numbers and want to look at providing that opportunity through a co-op conversation. Co-ops have happened for years across the state of Wisconsin. I mean, to be honest with you, in the United States of America. And so it's not a new conversation, but it is a conversation that does happen quite honestly often. When it comes to fruition, it comes in a formal proposal, as you see here. And when those things do happen, again, those are conversations that Mr. Dupuis and myself have to have first. And then, of course, at the board level, right after that, naturally, these things are simultaneously happening. And then the board has to, you know, make a decision at that point. But that is something that is brought to us quite often.
Perfect. Just a follow-up question. Beloit youth hockey, it's still a thing, right? Like here in Beloit?
Yep.
How do they feel about the co-op program? Because I know I haven't been in conversations, but I remember when my boys played football, they wouldn't get on ice. But a lot of the kids that play football at the Boys and Girls Club, in the wintertime, they play hockey. So when you say our numbers as like what happened, well, I mean, you've been here just as long as I have, but like what happened with those football players that play hockey to keep that agility on the field and on the ice? Like, do we?
Well, I mean, I could give you a ton of rationale, right? AAU, specialization, all types of things, money, those types of things, right? I mean, there's the gamut of why kids aren't participating in multiple sports again. From my understanding and having conversations with our hockey coaches and with the BYHA and the surrounding organizations that our coaches have had, these are the players that are coming to them. Obviously, we need to continue to find ways to give our youth access and opportunities to be involved in some of these things, and that's where I champion our leaders of our teams to offer summer camps, collaboration with the Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA, and where can we get more involvement? What are the barriers that we need to break down to give kids access and opportunity?
Thanks, John.
Right, is there a motion for action on WIA sports cooperatives for hockey, boys and girls hockey?
Oh, it's listed for discussion only.
Oh, is this the first time we're hearing it in action next time? All right. Okay,
Oh, may I ask a question?
go ahead, Board Member Miller.
Oh, would our administrators be interested? And I understand it's listed for discussion only, but I know like we could take action on it since it's on the agenda. Dr. Garrison and or Mr. Dupuis, is that something that you're interested in us doing tonight?
So naturally, we would always say this is the board's, discussion part. There's a cadence that you all have worked through, but that's up to the board to make that decision to vote tonight.
I would advise against taking any action only because it's posted for discussion only. And if we had notified the public that we would be taking action on it, that may have changed the way that they interact. So I would, since it's listed for discussion, I think that we should have action on this at the meeting on the 21st.
Board President Levy, just one more question. That sounds good to me. I'm just wondering, Mr. Dupuy and or Dr. Garrison, is there any degree of urgency? Like, are we good? Like, everybody's good with us waiting the 2 weeks or so?
The vote would need to happen on at the next meeting if that's what the board decides to do. April 1st is when we have to submit this application accordingly.
Perfect. Thank you so much for clarifying. Thank you, and thank you for the presentation.
Okay. All right, so yeah, we're keeping with our cadence then. We've heard it for the first time, we'll hear it the second time and take action. 6B, TC Networks contract extension for 23-24.
Okay, I do have a presentation. We did discuss this in the committee. Here we go. So TC Networks has been the technology services provider to the district for many years. There was an RFP done in May of 2019. They were approved for a three-year contract following an RFP. And then in February 2022, TC Networks was given a one-year contract extension for the current year, and that contract was approved with a 0% increase in their contract. For this year, this proposed one-year contract extension for 23-24 also was agreed to with a 0% increase. This would allow us some time to do an RFP for technology services in 24-25. This is about an $800,000 contract, and we do recommend approval of this one-year contract extension.
I also like to just note that the TC Networks have worked very closely with us over these extensions. I would like to say, based off of the feedback that I've received from administration, teacher information as well, that they've worked and served us very, very well. Naturally, when we're thinking about the needs of a school district, they are very. From teachers needing to learn how to log in to really trying to figure out a network problem. Those extensive conversations happen with TC Networks. I rarely get any complaints around their service. And I say rarely, I haven't had any complaints around their service. The phone system was a thing, but we upgraded our phones over the winter break, which was a big overhaul that TC Networks did take the reins with. I knew I was going to run into some questions about that because it was upgrading all the phones in our school district, and that's a lot. And so, bearing that conversation, I will say that since I've arrived here, TC Networks have helped me in a lot of conversations as well, and making sure that I'm up to speed as it pertains to the technology that they use here in the school district. I've also had extensive conversations around not only what they provide here as service, but they also have extended their service to hiring some of our students and working with them from a learning opportunity here in our school district. So again, I just want to bring note that these things have transpired here in the district with TC Networks, and I'm fully confident that they will be able to serve us for another year. We also like to note that we will be going to RFP. We haven't had a person in the position of business service manager to help manage some of these conversations. And that's a lot. When our exiting person went out and last year, a year and a couple of months ago, I can't even remember how long it is at this point, TC Networks had to keep, doing their thing. That was their reporting partner. And so again, to not miss a beat through, leadership changes is also very important to note. We will have a business manager to come on board March the 16th. I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. I look forward to Mr. Chatty's service, but also appreciate Mr. Duff's conversations and work that he's done thus far as well. These contracts and requisitions and additional conversations are not done in isolation. And I think people have to just bring note to that sometimes It's a team that really gets this done, and TC Network has been part of the team since I've arrived, and again, they have worked and served us very well. And again, we will be going to RFP, and so TC Networks can get back into the RFP conversation. But again, at the current time, I believe the one-year extension does support the work that they've done here in our school district.
I have a question. Was the first time this proposal was presented to the committee this evening?
Yes, this was the first time this was reported to the committee this evening. It was approved based off of the timeline of the contracts. This was one of the ones that we needed to move to the full board for consideration.
Okay, and as I'm looking at the proposed service agreement, it says that the effective date would be July 1, 2023. So when would the full board need to make a decision in order to not have interrupted service?
So our federal E-rate consultant has urged us to have this extension approved this month. So so we did have a window where there was a bid. E-rate requires a bid process for some of their work, and so that was opened and closed just last month. So TC Networks is a participant in providing services covered by E-rate services, and so that bid process closed, and so then we have the opportunity to have the extension approved this month. But like I said, they would recommend that we approve this month sometime.
Thank you so much. And are we following our normal cadence of information the first time, action the second time, which would place this on our meeting for the 21st, which would meet that this month deadline?
This is a action item.
Well, it's listed as discussion / action, which is a little confusing, which is why I asked, are we following our normal cadence of we see it the first time for information and discussion, we see it the second time for action?
So I would say this time I'm looking for action. I did say, so discussion happened in my humble opinion, discussion did happen at the committee level. Action would this time happen at the board. And so that's why that backslash was there.
Okay. It's my understanding, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, but the first time the full board sees something, it's for discussion, information, and the second time the full board sees it, it's for action. And again, correct me if I'm wrong. So this was presented to the committee for the first time this evening, and also to the full board for the first time this evening. So I would not be opposed to having this listed on our March 21st meeting, and then that way board members who may have questions would have that 2-week period to submit those questions, get responses. We can report out when it comes up on the agenda and then take action and still meet the deadline request of having this resolved this month.
Yield to the will of the board.
Just weigh in. Miller and Winfield.
Hey, this is Megan. So yeah, usually stuff comes up through committee first for discussion, and then it goes back to committee for discussion again, and then I think after that second time through committee, it comes to the full board for action, usually on the consent agenda. So I wasn't sure when I saw that if there had been previous discussions or if there was like some urgency to it or anything, which is why I asked previously about like the hockey piece as well. I could go either way. Like I said, if there's, in the past, like we've waived, it's a practice, not a policy. So I don't feel really strongly one way or the other. I just, noting that 3 board members are absent and it is the first time that we're getting it, I think it would be understandable to wait until the following meeting. However, the administration put it on here for action tonight, and if there's a compelling reason that we need to take action tonight, I'm fine with it. That's just my context, I guess.
I'm just going to piggyback off of Megan. Megan and Board Member Levy, just because we have 3 that's not here, probably be a good idea just to wait. I know that TC Networks have been really doing a fabulous job and help support our students and our staff, but I think we should give them the chance to to weigh in on the extension, and only because it's been the third one. Mr. Duff?
So the first one was approved for 3 years, so this would just be the second extension,
Oh, just a second.
second 1 year.
And just a question for the administration, so as long as we take action on the next meeting is the 21st, we're still in our timelines and things will be fine?
Yes, I believe so.
All right.
Yes.
So on this one, then I would say let's, because this is something else I'm about to talk about. We've talked about this in governance and even in our board development work. Again, one of these structures that might change for us as we're moving forward. But for this one, let's wait to the 21st because it did come out of committee at its first hearing today. Because if it wouldn't have came out of committee, it would not make the cadence for the regular board meeting. So it's where it needs to be, and we'll be able to take care of this on the 21st. All right. So we are at 6C, board self-evaluation. And I know that this is, well, we already do this, but we have not, we have to complete for 2023. And we need we have our WASB board self-evaluation tool, and we need a complete date. So I asked Michelle, I think that we have in front of us the links to join. Do we have also these links that are in front of us? Do we have them are they just in paper, or are they also like in the emails?
It's the same in the email.
Okay. So we have it in the email and in front of us. I would say that I think completing it by when is our next, if we get done by the 31st, we have to turn it over to school perceptions and they'll be able to present to us. It's a matter of when do we want the presentation from school perceptions.
Quick question. Who did the email come from and when did we receive that?
You can turn your mic on, Mrs. Sure.
The email typically comes from WASB, and then it comes, I'm not sure when this one came, it comes at various times. And so I just hang on to it until you guys are ready to do the self-eval. And so this self-eval, these codes and links are good through it said it on one of these pieces of paper because it's free to all school districts, and it said, I believe it said it was good through the end of the year.
Oh, 2023.
Sounds good. I'm just looking and I'm not seeing the email, so I just wanted to confirm that that was sent to board members.
I believe it would have been sent to board members because there's one sheet that's for school board members and then there's one for administrators. And then they usually send me just a paper copy as like the board secretary or administrative assistant.
Board Member Levy, in the past, has
Oh,
it came
it's
from?
on the, I think it's also in the administrative content and our board docs. If your person is filled in, it's all at the bottom.
Oh, no, that's fine. I was just wondering if the email came through. That's all.
Full transparency, I wouldn't know if it came through to you from the WASB. Sorry.
We'll work on that part. We have done it before. We'll get that sorted. I think for board members, and it will be the four of us making this decision tonight about when do we want to get it done, giving the month to have it completed, because when do we want to receive the presentation from school perceptions, and also if you think about where the election is, that coming to whatever our composition is at that time, to be able to sit down and do the work of the roles and responsibilities that we have to do with Drew, and then also refocusing our work as a board based off of our board development results.
Well, I think the last board meeting date that the current board will have the opportunity to be together will be April 4th. But I would say any work that we're scheduling with Drew should happen after the new board is seated.
Okay. The 4th.
So I guess the question is, how much time do they need to process and prepare the report? Because the latest we could do that would be April 4th. So what does that put our deadline for completion? Is it like a 2-week window? What's their turnaround time?
Do you
And
remember?
if I may,
Rob?
the new board members, whoever's voted in on the 4th at the polls, are not actually seated until the last Sunday in April. So they don't actually take office until that last Monday in April.
So then we'll have a meeting on the
So
4th.
we're
we'll
able
still
to
have
get
the
through a full
18th.
cycle in April of board meetings.
I think that for school perceptions, if we were to be done, if we submit on the 30, if we're all as board members submitted on the 31st at the end of the month, I think they've turned those things around for us. Yeah.
Board Member Miller has her question.
Board Member Miller.
Oh, hey, thanks, guys. So I'm just curious. I think so. I'm not opposed to having our new sworn-in board member or members participate in the roles and responsibilities. I think I'm wondering if, like, that meeting. I don't have the calendar in front of me. I apologize. But the second meeting in April, is that like the 18th? Did I hear? Would that be a good time for us to invite the new board member or board members in to, like, observe and see, like, what our self-evaluation is I'm just thinking, if I were newly elected, that would be maybe a nice transition for me to come in and just, like, because we'll be having a discussion about how we operate, kind of what our strengths are, where we need to grow. And I feel like that would be a really good opportunity as a new board member to kind of calibrate. So I'm wondering if, like, we do it like that last kind of like second meeting in April.
Right.
And maybe Board Member Levy, just to clarify, were you suggesting that we do the work with Drew, the roles and responsibilities work with Drew, then that first meeting in May? Or is that something also that we could do prior to that, right? And just like invite people to participate in, but like, or, to observe at least, but maybe have that wrapped up before the new board is seated?
No, the thing that I was saying is that as far as the survey itself, what time does it take for us to complete it, and then to receive the results? Mrs. Shope helped to remind us that the election's on the 4th, but the new board members aren't seated at that time. You gave the helpful reminder that just like when Board Member Winfield and Brian Anderson joined, they did join us in that work of our collective commitments. So they came in earlier. So that would be, that's an invite that we can make. Dr. Garrison and I, as we discussed in our last board development, looking at board development, happening at a separate time than the regular meetings. So we have to get that part squared away. So that, we'll get that part figured out. But to receive our report from, we got to take the survey and then get it to school perceptions and receive our report. I think the kind of in our timeline here, if we, because we do have a board member that is going to be out for a period. So if we were to get done and submit our results on the 31st, I think that school perceptions will be able to process and we can receive our report of our survey and assessment of our work by the 18th. And then that's the first part.
So
of just having this.
Perfect. So sorry, but we're personally sorry. So just to clarify, we could do like the 18th. We could get the report from school perceptions, right? And then we hopefully by that point we'll have already done that kind of roles and responsibilities piece with Drew. Would then the next meeting with Drew, that would be with the newly seated board, could potentially involve like some goal setting or discussion around those results, because we'll be getting them the 18th. That gives us a chance to hear, digest, kind of have our initial reactions, and then it seems like the next best thing to do after that would be to do something, some kind of follow-up, with Drew, without Drew, doesn't matter, like, whatever direction our board president at that time would want to go in, just so that we can actually, like, after having digested that piece from school perceptions, like, do something with that information. Because I feel like that night of is, like, a good time to, like, digest, like, and process together. But, like, my preference would be, like, to revisit that maybe at the next meeting, or, like, a week or so later, if you want to schedule, like, a special board development thing or something.
Right.
That was probably too much for tonight, but I'm just trying to think, like, long game, like, making sure that we're effectively using this information.
Right. So I think if we aim to take it and complete it by the end of March, we'll have it on the 18th. And I think, like I said, with the new board members, new board members, whatever the composition is, the 18th, when we receive that, would be a time. So our work with Drew would end up happening sometime after the 18th, and maybe before May or at the beginning of May, because we have to find a time that is not in a regular meeting setting to get that done. So I'm going to propose that we complete this. It's started now. We'll get the link out, and everyone will submit by the 31st of March. Okay. So anyone care to make a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Board Member Miller and seconded by Amy Levy that we'll complete our evaluations by the 31st. And look, Ms. Shope, can you look to schedule with School Perceptions to have that on the 18th for us, the feedback? And if that timeline doesn't work, let us know. We might have to come back and change it. But that's our plan. All right, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. All right. Budget update.
So this is the monthly budget update. And so I sent out the budget assumptions tracking report, and I have indicated a couple of areas for concentration. I don't have any updates yet on enrollment and other areas, but I do have an arrow by staffing. So as I mentioned at the last budget update, the superintendent worked with the administrative team and cabinet to adjust and freeze vacant positions. Many of those positions are not only not going to be filled this year, but they will not be rolled over to the next year. So this is about $1 million savings to staffing. And so now that can be assumed as a savings for this next budget year as well. We are still working on other staffing discussions, and I'll be indicating those projected savings as we move through the budget process.
Okay, so kind of just understanding that we started in October thinking that we might be about $4.5 million down, and you're saying that now we might be $3.5 million down by the actions we've taken?
So the staffing savings this year, we should be down at least $1 million, possibly more. And then, so in that category, but because we're eliminating positions this year that are unfilled, we're also saving them next year because we won't fill them either. So it's a reduction in the base budget.
On both sides, okay.
Correct. And then, again, I know Mr. Duff will also touch on this a little later, but we also have some other things that we're working towards. One of the things being our early retirement conversation. There will be retirements that will naturally happen. We're working with the BEA to make sure that in our package is something that both sides agree to. We believe that approval will happen sometime probably this week, and we'll know even more possible savings that'll come from that conversation. And then I'll let Mr. Duff continue the conversation.
So just another question then, so with that early retirement conversation, will that this year affect that OPEB, that 3.5 million or so that was there?
So it depends on how many retirees that we actually have where OPEB will be, discussed. And if it does go into that OPEB conversation, naturally, we will have to have additional conversations here at the board level. If it stays with what we typically have from a year-to-year basis, from what I've viewed and what I'm looking at, again, it's kind of hard to say, well, who's going to retire, who's not. So I don't want to be on record saying that, it's going to be the same, because we could have more, and then we have to talk about OPEB. But if we have the same, then we wouldn't, and we'll be saving regardless.
Correct. The current budget does assume we have a retirement expense, and so based on what we normally see, we have adequate funds if we have that same amount of individuals choose to retire. If we see a dramatic increase, that's a different story, and we'll revisit that, but we can work through that.
Additionally, there's going to be conversations around us making additional savings and the conversation with our insurances. And I know you're going to talk about that, Mr. Duff.
Yeah, that was the next one, so you
Okay,
can
sorry.
start.
I can start off, sorry. So we will be having conversations. We've had conversations with the BEA around possible savings in their overall insurances as a staff. And for whatever reasons, this is a package that we believe will, again, possibly save us up to $1 million additional cost savings. At the current time, we do believe the BEA will support this conversation, but that's something that I want to make sure that is brought to light, and I'll turn it back over to Mr. Duff.
Correct. So that was the next category, employee benefit costs. As we mentioned to the board, I think last month, that we were going to work collaboratively to find out if we can achieve savings in our health benefit costs. There is a way to restructure it so that employees have the same out-of-pocket overall costs while saving the district money, so it would be a win-win. And so we were able to come up with some restructuring that was agreeable to just about everybody, that could save up to $1 million. So that's currently, I have it under purple, is under discussion. So then we would bring that to the board for approval next month. Because we do have to get the plan changes done and ready and out in time for the next renewal period. It starts in September, so it takes some time to get that all going. So that would be another, so right now we haven't recognized that savings. Once it's approved, we'll put it on the assumptions tracking report as a savings.
Then that would be $2 million.
So, correct.
Well, I mean,
So,
we're down 4.5, so we end up down 2.5. It makes a difference.
so that is, so we are making progress to becoming more efficient, addressing the shortfalls that the district has been facing. So this is great work, and I'm actually excited about it, so.
I am too.
So the other thing is departmental budget change over prior year. I didn't put this in there, but in cabinet today, we're going to start with every department has a freeze in their budgets. And so we'll start having every department work through their budgets with a freeze in mind. The next area is an increase. That's like the wrong way, but it is what it is. I have a $100,000 increase. That's assuming that's assuming a 5% increase in our utility costs. Utility costs are going up. Some are saying it could be as much as 10%. But I thought I'd at least recognize that we will be facing some inflationary costs, especially in the utility area. Now, as we work through other things, if we find, as departments are working through their budget, and they're saying, well, we really have this going on, we will add it to the budget adjustments report to let you know and give you a heads up as we work through the budget. Now, this is one where it's a big one, that the employee compensation adjustment, we haven't decided yet. Decision point will pretty much come later in May, June, after the referendum is done, and then the legislature's legislative action is more clear. We should know late May to June, some better idea what the state budget will do, but I'll be talking about that later.
CPI considerations at that time.
Correct, yeah. So CPI is currently 8%. That's a lot of money. So, and then the governor's budget provides about a 3.5% increase. Does provide, well, I'll be talking about that later. I'm going on a squirrel, I kind of, whoops, I went on a different tangent.
Right. Well, just one question. I know we, with the BEA, in the last conversations when we were building the budget, I think they had took like $1,250 over the 3 years. And there's a difference. I don't know, as we look at that other employee compensation adjustment, what discussion points have happened or about, like I said, CPI being 8, and then just kind of where's that conversation at?
Sure. So right now we are working through 2 of the first conversations, which is, sorry, I got my hand on the screen. My apologies. Will be, again, the insurance conversations. One of the first ones we need to kind of work through, along with the early retirements. My next conversations, we'll start conversations around CPI and kind of where we are with that conversation. Typically, 8% will be a big jump here in the school district, and it's something that not a lot of districts are moving towards. As a matter of fact, there's a WASBO sheet that we all have started to share amongst other school districts as it pertains to what other districts are doing from a CPI perspective. And I think that average right now is coming in around anywhere from 3 to 5%, 4 to 5%. I haven't looked at it in about a month, but because it changes as people keep adding, what they're planning on doing. And so that is a much larger conversation that we will have to have with BEA around CPI increases for the following school year.
And in some respects, I don't know, premature maybe, but to start a discussion before we know what the state action is going to be, it would be hard to commit a significant adjustment to compensation if the state provides us with a minimal increase. So it would only increase our structural deficit. So we do have to take a couple things in mind, and but we haven't forgotten about it. But I think I mentioned to you each percent is $500,000. So
Each percent is $500,000. Gotcha.
and so like if you go to 8%, that adds $4 million. So we would have to figure out how to do that in addition to cutting back on the deficit that we're facing as well.
Well,
I did.
and it's going, right. That's a
So it's,
process.
this is, I think this picture is supposed to show we're marching through the budget and resolving and getting better. So, and then everything becomes more clear as we work our way through it. The next area is with, I have a bracket around our state and categorical aids and some of those other revenues, but those, I'll be reviewing the governor's budget following this. And then, so our budget balance is improved by almost $1 million. And as I mentioned, as part of the administration is working on reviewing staffing, and we will be having departments and schools work on their budgets soon. Any other questions? So this might be my last one of these. Bob will have to do the next one.
We'll keep you around, man.
And then the next one,
I was gonna ask a question about, before you move on, a question about staffing. I know that, like I said, we're continuing to make some decisions with the reconfiguration. As far as like the building budgets, is there gonna be like a period of adjustment after we kind of find out where we're at the end of March, April?
So typically what happens when when we put this together, Mark and I, back in November, trying to kind of march to a process, what I like to see is money being balanced first. And that's kind of what I've been focusing on, like really balancing our budgets, getting us, I hate to say it, but I want to be at zero before the school year starts so we can actually kind of be on the positive side moving forward. So to answer your question specifically, I kind of have to still work through where we are, even as it pertains to possible reconfiguration. There's going to be savings there. Building restructuring, let's say like repurposing, it's going to be savings there. I just want to make sure I can see that we're making the process, the progress that I put forth when I started. And then I can start saying to other folks, this is how much money you can actually spend, or I hate to say how much money you can spend, but this is your budget for this school year. I've made the decision to freeze the department's budget. And so that's one of the first steps. But as other decisions are made, staying on this, as close to the cadence as we possibly can, it'll help me make further decisions as it pertains to budgets. Plus, we also know that we have the referendum out there, which also is something that I have to take in consideration as well moving forward. So right now, to answer your question, I kind of need to keep things kind of moving like they are, yeah.
Okay.
Because we are going to save money in the insurances, when it's approved, of course. We are going to save money in the retirements when they come through, of course. We are going to save money, of course, when we start repurposing buildings, when they are decided, of course. But these are the steps that we're actively making and not just talking about.
And, we're working through that. The staffing, work is being done by administration on the staffing aspect of the reconfiguration and other operational costs that we have to keep in mind, so. Okay, so any other questions on the, okay. The next area we thought we'd go over is the governor's budget proposal. So I did review this in the committee. And I was doing a school finance review with the committee, and I've been talking about the different categories, but I thought it'd be good to go over the governor's budget proposal. And we should keep in mind that the governor proposes his budget, and the legislature then does what they want to do. So they will be working through that process. Frequently, the governor proposes something and the legislature significantly changes it, and then the governor vetoes some things. So there is a waiting game, and for school districts, it makes us nervous because we really don't know what the state's going to do until May, June, sometimes August, and school year is ready to start. So we have to do a lot of our budgeting before then. But I have some highlights of the governor's budget proposal. He had the state does a 2-year budget, and it's about $2.6 billion in additional funds over the 2-year period. In addition, he proposed a $1 billion increase in equalization aid. Equalization aid is what's used for property tax relief for schools. So School District of Beloit receives quite a bit of equalization aid. So this will help maintain stable property taxes by having that in there. He did propose a revenue limit increase of $350 per pupil for 23-24, the next budget year, and then an additional $650 per pupil in fiscal year 25. So the $350 per pupil is about a 3.5% increase. And as I mentioned, our CPI is at 8%. So that's a little bit different. But then he does have another jump in the second year of the budget of $650. The per pupil aid, this is per pupil funding that we receive. It's about $724 something dollars, $750. But he's adding small amounts to that per pupil aid of $24 per pupil and $45. The big area, is Megan still on? This is an exciting one for her and all board members. He's providing $1 billion of special education aid to reach 60% funding in both years of the biennium. And in addition, he's providing additional funding for high-cost special education reimbursement. So if we have we do claim high-cost special education, it'll be a higher reimbursement rate. And the Medicaid services we receive will also be changed so that we retain 100% of that cost rather than a 60%. So we haven't received the full amount. The state always took a skim. Okay, so then he also proposed increased reimbursement costs for English language learners, and he provided a significant proposal for mental health support, providing $270 million for the Get Kids Ahead initiative. So overall, unfortunately, the per pupil funding increase does not help us of $350 next year because of our declining enrollment and hold harmless, the per pupil increase just reduces that. But it helps us the next year by $3.9 million. Now, the other thing it should be recognized is while we don't get any benefit from that, it increases our independent charter school tuition and open enrollment costs. So that per pupil increase is seen as a revenue, but also is an expense. The other thing, the special education aid, that is the biggest benefit next fiscal year. It would be about $4.5 million increase for the district in special education revenues. And then in addition, for English language learners, we'd get about $180,000 of additional state aid. And I'm not sure about the mental health support, but we could provide details on that later, but we should get some additional benefits from that. There are a whole bunch of other grant programs and different initiatives that are in there as well, but I only went with the big stuff. So,
I just have a quick question. When you say the $4 million savings and then additional funding coming in for ELL, is that with our current rate of identified students? Is that how we're doing the calculation?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
So as you're working on that, we will continue to monitor the legislative action on the budget and its impact on the school district Beloit.
I just like to note too, again, thank you, Mr. Duff, for putting this presentation together. When we're talking about per pupil expenditures, and again, my goal is that we will plateau based off of our reconfiguration. And actually, that's a goal that I believe everybody in the community will definitely from the superintendent's perspective, would want. If once we plateau our declining enrollment, I think again, people, if it goes up, we also get more money too, right? And that's a thing that I'm looking forward to, possibly having that conversation with the board level at. And so again, we're talking about cadence and pace. Getting our students to stay here in the school district board is a very top priority of mine. But also noting that with our reconfiguration, with parents really wanting our students to remain in the third grade and move to third grade and stay in elementary in the fourth grade, and the reconfiguration with our current fourth graders going back to the elementary school, I believe again, our numbers could possibly start to increase again. And that's something that, again, I want to make sure that we bring attention to, that the board and, agree to that conversation. I think it's just, again, something that we need to be proud of here in the school district of Beloit.
Board Member Miller, I see your hand up.
Thank you so much, Board President Levy, and thank you, Dr. Garrison. Definitely very excited about all of the work that you and your team are doing for our district. A couple of comments and a question. I'm wondering, I'll start with my question first, because Mr. Duff, and thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. Certainly, the governor has many exciting items listed in his proposal. I did on my own attend like a 2-hour budget explanation kind of piece last week, and yeah, definitely some great things. But of course, it's all subject to what happens in joint finance, and we know that that's going to all go back and forth. So my question to my colleagues on the board is whether or not we would be interested, as we've done in past years, in formulating our own resolution so that we can speak out and advocate as a district board to the lawmakers that will eventually vote on the budget. So that's kind of my question to my colleagues. And I guess just a couple quick comments. One, I really appreciate all the work, Dr. Garrison, that you're doing, and I appreciate what you're saying about our enrollment. In this discussion that I attended last week, which was through the Wisconsin Public Education Network. There are a couple of teachers, school board members from different areas there. One of the big themes that came out to me in that discussion is that we have to look forward as school districts in Wisconsin are losing enrollment, not just because of parents leaving public education in general, which is absolutely a factor, also due to the rise of, the charter school enrollment, kids going to those private schools that are publicly funded. But furthermore, things like lowering birth rates. And so I just don't want to count all the way on us. I don't know that it should be in our sights to try to get back to where we were. And I don't think that you were saying that at all, but I just want to just the way that I'm looking at these numbers and thinking about it is we have to look into the future and what are these changing factors, right, that are affecting not just our district, but districts across the state, right? Lower birth rate, generations that are having children, moving out of Wisconsin for different economic opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. So given that, I just think that as our board proceeds with budgeting decisions, that's a framework that I'm operating within, and I wanted to share that. And then finally, Mr. Duff, thank you so much for highlighting all the exciting special education pieces. I think I lost my other comment, but I've spoken for long enough, so I'm going to stop anyway. But yeah, I guess just kicking the question to my colleagues, if we're interested perhaps at a future meeting in proposing or formulating a resolution so that we can be advocates for what we like about this budget.
I think a really appropriate and timely moment for that to happen would be at our meeting on the 21st, as I and anyone else who's registering will be representing the district at the WASB day on the Capitol the following day.
Yeah, I think that sounds like an agenda item to make sure there's a space for that. So we'll write that down. I do think that, like you said, as we, the other continued budget conversations, thank you for the work that has taken place. That we are realizing a savings in budgeting that'll make a difference for us. On the other side of the referendum, we'll have some conclusions, and then, like you said, later in July, I think that, as like Dr. Garrison said, we're working through a process and an order of operations, but we'll get to a place where we got to identify how do we want some things to look based on some of those outcomes and some prioritization. We do have our strategic plan, so we'll be able to do that, but that sounds like end of March, beginning of April, and some of the coming things in April as we make our way through, kind of where my thoughts are at.
So I'll just say briefly, because this may be your final presentation, Mr. Duff, I have appreciated the partnership with you and Dr. Garrison, and it's apparent in the presentations that you bring to us. I've learned a lot, and they've been very user-friendly. I'm sure Mr. Shady is going to do a great job. He has big shoes to fill, so thank you so much.
I enjoyed being a temporary Purple Knight. And I do really enjoy helping out districts in need. I worked for a number of districts in poverty, so this kind of helped out. So I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Only correction, once a Purple Knight, always a Purple Knight.
That's right. We'll get you some swag. Now, we are thankful for your service to us, yes.
I would be remiss if I didn't. I mean, Mark has been around for, quite some time now, and, I just happened to know him through other superintendents, and knowing that he was here upon my arrival did, help my brain a little bit, because it's a lot. It is a whole lot that the business office has to do, and I can't explain that like in one word sentences. It's just a whole lot that they have to work through on a daily basis to, from an operational perspective, to make all this work. And so I'm happy that he has been here as a consultant and to, kind of work with me and how I want to see things done. Because it's not always easy working with superintendents that have, a lot of crazy ideas and things that I want to see happen in the district. But Mark was very receptive, and of course, I'm not sure if any budget manager will be mad when the superintendent started talking about saving money. So, thank you, Mr. Duff. He will be with us again March 21st. Mr. Chady will be.
I think Mr. Chady has to cover that one.
Right, because he'll be
If medical
in the
procedure.
air somewhere. But Mr. Chady will be taking over the realms from that conversation. But again, this is Mr. Duff's. I want to say your last presentation. So, thank you so much.
I'll be around
Thank
if
you
need be.
so much.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we're going to get something for you special.
Well, thank you so much for your many years of service.
Makes you feel good when you see some of the things happen that you need to happen. In the agenda, future meeting dates. Teaching, Learning, Equity, and Pupil Services, Tuesday, March 21st at 5:30 p.m. Human Resource Committee, Tuesday, March 21st at 6:30 p.m. Regular board meeting, Tuesday, March 21st at 7 p.m. And Governance, Tuesday, March 28th at 6 p.m., which is during spring break, which we will need to have that meeting, but we'll have to work on the framing and the time of that. That might change. Most definitely will change, but we'll get it together here. So now we are at 8, executive session. A motion may be made and a vote taken to convene the Board of Education into closed session pursuant to Section 19.85, parentheses 1, parentheses C, relative to considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved by Board Member Levy. Is there a second? Amy Levy? Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Miller. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those, Mrs. Shope, will you give us a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Amy Levy? Aye. Joanne Whitfield?
Aye.
Megan Miller?
Aye.
And Sean Levy?
Aye. And-
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, and we'll be adjourning from closed session. So that is the end of our public meeting tonight. Thank you.